guys, welcome back on Mummy's Love. We're once again with Mummy Shehnaz, and today I'm going to talk about how much did the IVF cycle cost us. Well, when you think of IVF, there are first three things that click your mind, or the first three things that possibly come to your mind are obviously number one being hormone therapy and injections, and number two being the uncertainty of success in this procedure, and last but not the least, the very important thing that comes to your mind would definitely be the amount of money that you would end up paying for the IVF cycle. So a lot of people would just kind of hold them back for going in for an IVF cycle because they know that it does take an enormous amount of money and quite a substantial amount of your life's savings and earnings. So this is going to give you a little bit of information, a little sneak peek into how much we spent during our entire IVF process. It's been about 2 years that we underwent IVF, so definitely the prices would have possibly gone up, but of what I know, not much has changed since then. Um, the prices have still somewhat been the same so far. So I hope this video gives you all the pertinent information. I will try to convert the money from Indian rupees to dollars wherever necessary, and this is just going to give you a very broad segregation, or a very broad classification of how much money goes into the medicines, the procedure, etc., etc. This video is not going to give you too many details because the cost of medicines will be different from within India, state to state, and of course between different countries, and the medical procedure cost also varies across the world. However, it is true that India is one of the less expensive countries when it comes to getting an IVF treatment done. So I will try to give in all the pertinent and relevant details in this particular video. I hope you find this video to be useful. Before we get started, please don't forget the subscribe button, because number one, that keeps you notified on the upcoming videos that might be useful for you, and number two, that tells me that how much you appreciate my work. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button that's right below, and don't forget to hit the like button if you find this video to be informative. So when it comes to the cost that you're going to bear for the entire IVF process, you can broadly classify it into two parts. One is going to be the cost that you'll be spending on your doctor's consultation, visits, scans, the entire embryo implantation, and the follicle retrieval process, and in vitrification, and semen analysis. Of course, you cannot leave behind things like a blastocyst, and if required, something like a assisted hatching. And the other part of your IVF cost is going to be your medications, your injections, all the hormones that you will be taking during the entire process. That's going to be quite expensive, and that's going to make a larger part of the entire IVF cost. So when we started the entire IVF process, we kind of took briefing on how much it's going to cost us. Different clinics have different costs, different expenses during the IVF process, but eventually if you go to multiple clinics, you will eventually find out that it's going to cost you between 2 lakhs to 2.5 lakhs. So friends, let me share some details with you about how much we paid for the first part of the IVF procedure, which is the procedural cost that we had borne during this process. So to begin with, the major cost that we paid around for this procedure, which included the follicle retrieval, the embryo transfer, and also which included the consultations and the scans, we paid approximately $1,000 for that. Yeah, about $1,000 was the cost for just purely this procedure, and which it did not include anything like the medical tests or the semen analysis or the semen's freezing the semen for further requirement, or the cost that we paid for blastocysts or anything else. So it just included the pure consultation cost. So it was about 70,000 rupees to about 80,000 rupees, which is about $1,000 plus technically, or $1,100, $1,200 for that matter. We've paid more money for getting a blastocyst done. For people who have not seen my previous videos and may not have a clue, that both my twins were conceived through IVF and were fundamentally blastocyst embryos. Now, this cost did not include the cost that we paid for any of the medical tests. Neither does it cover the cost of the semen, which was kind of taken and frozen, which was not really a very essential step at that point in time, but it was done and we paid separately for it. And it also did not cover the blastocyst part of IVF. In case you'd like to see more details on how the embryo transfer process happens, maybe you would like to go ahead and see an exclusive video on the entire embryo transfer process and that all that you need to know about it. I will go ahead and link that up for you, and I hope that'll be very informative for people who are just going to get started on the IVF process. Anyway, so we paid separate costs for these procedures. I will give you a quick briefing on how much we've paid for blastocyst. So for blastocyst procedure, we paid about 20,000 rupees, which is approximately $300 for for the particular blastocyst process. Thankfully, we did not require anything like assisted hatching or anything. Obviously, that comes with its own cost. I'm not sure what that cost is. Maybe you'd like to check with the clinic that you are, you are being referred to. So we paid about $300 for the blastocyst process, and we paid a very nominal amount of 5,000 rupees for the semen freezing and semen analysis. So that is what we've paid for the procedural part of IVF, which was not as substantial as the cost, if you compare it with the cost of medications that we took. So I will move on to the next part of IVF, which is the hormones and the medications. So I do not really have a complete breakup of how much we've paid for the hormone therapy, but and also it's not wise to share how much hormones we've used or taken, because it will be different from individual to individual. Some people would require a lot more progesterone, a lot more ovulurix, or a lot more menopause, stuff like that. For me, I just required a very minor dose of these hormones, which were required to grow the follicle, because those particular medications are the most expensive one. So I think if we talk about the medications that we've paid for initially during the beginning of the cycle and throughout until the time we conceived, there would have roughly been about a lakh, easily 1 lakh rupees, which would come out to be around $1,500 to $1,400, and this cost can definitely go up to 1.5 lakhs, around $2,000 as well. This is going to be the major part of your IVF expense. The medications are really expensive. I'm not sure if that is the same in your country. Maybe you'd like to comment or share with the viewers in case the medicine costs in your country are any different. But in India, the medications are really expensive, as most of them are imported and not really produced in India. So medications like Overelix, Menopur, and there are so many more injections that I've completely forgotten about. They have been really expensive, and all the progesterone that I took vaginally was very expensive. I do remember. The progesterone shots that I took were not that expensive. So majorly, the major cost of IVF is going to be around the medications you take, and that may go up or down depending upon how well your body responds to the medications. Now, there's another part of the IVF cost that I haven't spoken about in the beginning, which I'm not really counting as part of IVF, but the moment you will step into any fertility clinic, that's going to be a cost that you want to bear, is going to be the cost of around medical tests. So we paid about 25 to 30,000 Indian rupees, which comes out to be around about $500 for the medical tests that we had at the beginning of the entire IVF process. There's an inexhaustive list of medical tests that you need to undergo before any fertility clinic begins on the IVF process. But most of these medical tests are generally covered by your medical insurance company, your Mediclaim policy, and you can go ahead and claim these and seek that benefit. But apart from that, nothing else was covered for us for the entire IVF process. So guys, this is a broad segregation of the amount of money that we spent for the entire IVF cycle. So you can estimate that it's going to be roughly anywhere between, as I said in the beginning, 2 lakh rupees to 2.5 lakh rupees, which I reiterate is going to be around $3,000 to $4,000. And of course, I'm not covering the medical test part in it. Which of late I've kind of started noticing an interesting trend that a lot of fertility clinics are following, which is wherein that you pay in lump sum for 2 cycles, and it's a kind of reduced cost, and in case it works out and you don't have to go for the second cycle, you will be refunded a certain amount of money. I'm not sure how wise it is to go for something like that, because that kind of makes me doubt on the surety of that particular fertility clinic on its own procedure. So I'm not sure how well that works for you. You may want to consult somebody who's taken up a decision to go for something like that. Now, if you've seen my fertility story and my IVF success story, if you haven't, I'm going to link it above for you, certainly. But if you've seen that in detail, you would realize that I have spent about 2.5 years of my time running helter-skelter from one doctor to the other and from one procedure to the other. That failed, and that's when we resorted to going in for an IVF, which was obviously the last option for us. And we had our own hesitations, like money and injections and hormones, and obviously, the uncertainty around the entire IVF process. So we had our own apprehensions and hesitations that stopped us for going in for an IVF cycle for almost a year. But eventually, when we went for it, it was a totally different story. We really found it to be less painful, less erratic, and far more controlled way of ovulating a woman or retrieving eggs. And we found it to be completely painless procedure, and that helped us conceive our twin boys. And we've been really happy that we went in for that, and we're so grateful and so blessed that it happened for us in the first go. IVF is definitely a big step. It requires a lot of motivation, a lot of positive thinking, a lot of your finances to make it a success. But if you can somehow manage to put that amount of money together, even if you have to wait for it for a while, I can tell you that it's going to be totally worth it. At least you will have that peace of mind that you tried, and if it works for you, really there's nothing better than that. And I can tell you, for most people that I know now, it does work. I had so many of you write to me about the fact that you didn't have more money in your first IVF cycle failed. That's really unfortunate, but I'm certain that for a lot of you it's also going to work. So something of that sort certainly involves a lot more than just commitment from your end, but it's all worthwhile at the end of it. Coming back to what I was trying to say, so if I kind of sum together or put together the amount of money that I would have spent in those 2.5 years, I can tell you that I would have easily had about 3 IVF cycles from that amount of money. You don't know where the money flows out, because you end up spending so much on ovulation studies, medications, you end up spending exorbitantly on consultations. You don't realize how that money flows out, and because it's not such a large amount that goes out in one go, you might really never feel the pinch. But if I sit back and if I calculate money that I spent in the entire procedure, the medications, before IVF, I would have spent no less, really. I would certainly advise you to keep aside the finances if you can manage it. Keep that aside and let that not be your determining factor to going for an IVF or not. It should be other things like your success rate, which your doctor will be the best to guide you about. So guys, this is about the information that I could gather on the amount of cost or the amount of money we paid for the IVF cycle. I hope you found this to be informative. I will be so glad to furnish any other information that you would require to help you stay positive and stay upbeat about your IVF cycle. If you are heading for one soon, I hope and I pray for the best results for you. I wish you all the very best, and I would love to hear from you if you have a success story to share with other viewers. Just a comment from you below would really make me feel good. I will see you soon in the next video. Until then, you guys have a great day. Take care. Stay positive. Bye.